being able to purchase the land, go through the process. 6 developers, 5 of which are Black, 3 are women. We are moving in the right direction, and we're going to continue to move aggressively with development, particularly for housing, and making it affordable. I promise. The last thing, green social housing is another initiative that we're putting forward to create essentially a government nonprofit entity that allows for a revolving loan to continue to build more affordable units, and then to make sure that that affordability remains in place. Because what happens is you build property, you build homes, and then, of course, natural accrue and gentrification takes place. This is a way to stave off gentrification while not only... If there is something in this city that I have caused to get worse, name it, because I can't think of anything.
The city of Chicago's credit rating has dropped. S&P Global Ratings announced today the city's general obligation bond rating went from BBB plus to just BBB. That means the credit agency believes the city is more likely to default. The rating drop comes after plenty of turmoil in City Hall over the city's budget, before the council finally passed a budget near the end of the year. Tonight, Chicago pushing back on the downgrade. The city saying, quote, despite the public budget negotiations over the last couple of months, the city's credit fundamentals have not changed, and the rating does not accurately reflect the strength of the city's credit or ability to meet its debt and pension obligations.
Boy. So we got to talk about woke Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who has a sub 10% approval rating, according to some recent polling. Okay, this guy is probably the most disliked Chicago mayor in the history of that city. Who knows? Okay, it was hard to imagine Chicago electing a worse mayor than Lori Lightfoot, but they did, right, with Brandon Johnson. And he has just done a disastrous job, okay? And his reelection is coming up here in a couple of years. And he is trying to save himself, okay, because his administration is currently in free fall like the rest of the Democrat Party. So he has now pulled out the oldest trick in the playbook for black politicians, which is to race hustle, okay, because the only reason Brandon Johnson was elected in the first place is because you had a bunch of black people in Chicago that decided to vote for Brandon Johnson because he's black, right? So he wants to basically repeat what happened in his initial election by having all these black people come out and to vote for him because Brandon Johnson is making black people believe that, hey, we're going to do things solely for black people, and that includes discrimination when it comes to hiring and when it comes to government contracts, which is something that he basically bragged about during an interview in which he was speaking to a church, right? So you know how these black politicians act when they get in front of the black church, right? They become very unhinged, and they say things that are, you know, racist, really. I mean, if anybody else said it, right, people will say, oh, this is racism, okay? And I want to go ahead and play some of the comments that Brandon Johnson made, because he made it clear that he is engaging in discrimination when it comes to the hiring practices of the city and when it comes to giving out some of these community development contracts. So take a look.
Here's the thing that I think is so profound and why black history is so critically important. And as the federal government works to wipe us out of history, make no mistake about this, black doesn't just crack. We don't go away. Black folks will be here in this city and in cities across America, protecting this democracy, protecting humanity, because that's what black people have always done. This country owes us a big thank you for the evolution of this democracy and protecting humanity across the globe. It was Chicago that stood with South Africa. It was Chicago that stood against the war in the Middle East. And we will continue to stand firm. And what was your question again? Employer of our people is our people. And so that's why this $1.25 billion bond investment for economic development and housing, it is the largest economic housing development infusion in the history of Chicago. We're not going small, we're going big because our people need it. If there's one thing, are encouraging developers to take upon multiple swaths of land in vacancy and build owner-occupied multiple units. The reason why that's important is because the missing middle allows for us to build at scale but it also allows for us to build generational wealth. And so our missing middle, we have 6 developers that have received the first $30 million for investment. 6 developers. Of those 6 developers, 5 of them are Black and 3 are women. And what they're doing is they're building owner-occupied multiple units. And the reason why that's important, as I talk about generational wealth, there was a study that was released, and I'm really grateful for Karen at the Urban League. She does just a wonderful job. And the study released indicated that the average cumulative wealth for white families in Chicago is roughly $200,000. It's about almost $230,000. The cumulative wealth for the average Black family in Chicago is 0. And we did some expansion at the airport, particularly in the cargo. And do you know there's never been a prime construction company that has led growth for an airport, particularly in cargo, anywhere in the United States of America? But BOA Construction received the prime construction contract at O'Hare under my administration. It's the first Black prime construction worker company to have a prime contract anywhere in the United States of America. And that's critical, not just for BOA Construction, but for the lives that he's going to transform because he's hiring them. But it's also critical for other major construction companies or mid-sized construction companies that are Black owned to know that there is a mayor who sees them and is going to work hard to ensure that whether you're developing homes, whether you are, looking to help take advantage of the opportunities through aviation, whether it's entrepreneurship to provide a service, that there are resources available for you in the city of Chicago. And one thing that I know for sure that I have to do over these next 2 years, every single dime that our people have been robbed of, I want to make sure that that is returned 2, 3-fold, because I believe in something called press down, running over. That is what we have to make sure that happens within our communities. Some detractors that will push back on me and say, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of Black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else. We are the most generous people on the planet. I don't know too many cultures that have play cousins. That's how generous we are. We just make somebody a family member, right? This is how we are. And so business and economic neighborhood development, the deputy mayor is a Black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a Black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a Black woman. Chief operations officer is a Black man. Budget director is a Black woman. Senior advisor is a Black man. And I'm laying that out because when you ask, how do we ensure that our people get a chance to grow their business?
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, some people may ask, well, what's wrong with the mayor said, right? Only thing he's saying is that, well, he's just giving Black people opportunities that they historically just haven't had, right? That's all it is, okay? No big deal, right? That's what some people would say, but I would just challenge people to just imagine if you had a white mayor who openly bragged about hiring white people to do contracts for the government, right? Like, for example, when he talked about the airport contract and he talked about how, he hired a Black business to do it. Could you imagine, a white mayor bragging about hiring a white business or a white-owned business to do something, right? Giving them government money, okay? What do you think people would say? Could you imagine a white mayor openly bragging about having basically all white leadership in the city, right? They will be accusing the mayor of being a Klansman, right? They will be accusing the mayor of white supremacy. So I'm trying to figure out what is the difference here, right? What is the difference between what a lot of people would deem to be white supremacist rhetoric if a white mayor had bragged about hiring white people when it comes to leadership positions and government contracts in the same way that Brandon Johnson just bragged about hiring Black people for these leadership positions in government contracts, right? That's the problem here. The problem here is that clearly what he's talking about is the fact that he is prioritizing race when it comes to hiring. Right. And this is one of the silliest things I've ever heard, because when these black leaders or so-called black leaders come out here and they say stuff like this, you're not helping black people when you do this. I mean, first and foremost, when you look at Brandon Johnson and his policies, I mean, his city is basically bankrupt, right? I mean, there are billions of dollars in debt. Their projected budget deficit is going to exceed $1 billion in each of the next 2 years. Okay, that financial strain has contributed to Chicago getting yet again another downgrade in their credit rating. Some of it has to do with the fact that it's a sanctuary city, and that Brandon Johnson supports illegals coming into Chicago and living in Chicago and basically benefiting from taxpayer dollars, okay, aka the tax dollars that are being paid by black people in the city, right? He supports giving those dollars to the illegal immigrants to then move into their neighborhoods and to potentially displace black folks. Again, this guy claims to be so pro-black, but yet he's not pro-black enough to realize that, hey, having these illegal immigrants come into Chicago and to get government funds is probably not going to help out black people too much, which is part of the reason why his approval rating is so low, even among black people, right? And there's a lot of backlash against Brandon Johnson from the black people of Chicago, the same people that voted for him. When you look at the education system in Chicago, a complete and total disaster as well, too. You're talking about grades 3 through 8, 77% of black students reading below grade level, right? When you talk about 11th graders, only 11.5% of black students were reading at a proficient level. Okay. Yeah, I mean, black students can't read, but yet this guy thinks that he's doing great things for black people in this city. Like, come on, bro. But again, there's a lot of problems with Chicago, and I'm not sure if I would be bragging about a city that I think, again, a lot of people feel like, okay, well, this city is not doing very well under Brandon Johnson. Why would I be bragging about the leadership being black when you have the mayor with such a low approval rating, right? Probably not a good idea, right? A lot of people are going to be looking at Brandon Johnson's approval rating, and people are going to be saying, oh, okay, maybe that has something to do with it, right? I mean, I'm just saying, this is not what he thinks that it is, okay? But I just think it's really cringe when people do this, because, again, it doesn't really help black folks, right? Like, here's the thing. I have nothing against hiring black people at all, okay? But it's nothing to brag about, because ultimately at the end of the day, you should be hiring the best person for the job regardless of their skin color or their race. Like, for example, my financial advisor is black and my accountant is Indian. Have I ever bragged about it? Right? Have I ever come up here and say, oh, look, I have a black financial advisor, right? Like, no, because it's a silly thing. Okay, I hired them because I feel like they're the best people for the job, not because of their skin color or race. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. And if I ever had to recommend people who are part of my team to anybody else, I would never lead with their skin color, their race. I will lead with their credentials. I will lead with their accomplishments, what they've done for me in a positive way. Yeah, I would lead with that. Okay, what I'm not going to lead with is their skin color, their race, because they weren't hired based off of that, right? They earned a job based off their own resume and the things that they have done. Okay, but again, that's not how these other black leaders think. They think that coming out here and bragging about all the black people they've hired and all of this is such a good thing when Chicago is in a state of disaster. You're not making black folks look good when you brag about how they're running a major city into the ground, right? I mean, look, there's articles written about his black leadership, right? The black leadership in his cabinet, right? Look at all these people, okay? They're highlighting, oh man, look at all these black folks running this city. Now, again, could you imagine white people creating a whole page bragging about white leadership? Again, they would call that white supremacy, right? They would call that white supremacy, okay? And this is what really bothers me about these people. It's the hypocrisy of all this, okay? Because these are the same people that will say that when black people are underrepresented, okay, in the workforce or whatever, then, oh, well, that's a problem because black people are 13% of the population, so we need 13% of all the opportunities, okay? Except that's not actually what they believe, okay? Because when you look at the demographic breakdown of Chicago versus who Brandon Johnson is hiring, again, there's clearly racial discrimination happening here according to leftists in their own woke logic, right? Like, for example, in Chicago, according to the 2020 census, 31% of the city is white, 29%, 30% of the city is Latino, 29% is black, and 7% is Asian, okay? The city's workforce is 40% white, 29% black, 26% Latino, and 3% Asian. Now, Brandon Johnson, when it comes to his hiring, listen to this and tell me whether or not you think this is discrimination. Again, based off the fact that Brandon Johnson has bragged about hiring based off race, right? Approximately 35% of the leadership that has been hired, people in positions of power, appointed to positions of power by Brandon Johnson between May 2023 and April, were black. 26% were white, 29% were Latino, and 6% were Asian. So what you have here, compared to the demographics of the city, black leadership in Chicago is overrepresented, okay? And white leadership is underrepresented compared to the population, okay? So that's what we have here. I mean, I'm just saying that is what the numbers show. And according to woke liberal logic, this should be a problem, except it's not a problem when black folks are overrepresented. When black folks are overrepresented, oh, that's not an issue, right? It's not an issue for black people to be 35% of the city's leadership, even though they're only 28% of the population in the workforce. Nothing wrong with that, right? They just got the job because they're the best for the job, right? But see, when it's the other way around, when black people are underrepresented, though, okay, now all of a sudden they're boohoo whining, crying racism. Something must be wrong with that, right? Something must be wrong when black people are underrepresented. Oh, but when black people are overrepresented, no problems, okay? That's just social justice. These people make me sick with the hypocrisy, right? It's just in your face, okay? All they care about is anti-white discrimination. They're showing you that. They're telling you that. Okay? Listen to them. This is what they're saying. But furthermore, when it comes to what Brandon Johnson is doing here, right, I want people to understand this city is in a ton of debt. Okay? And he's trying to engage in what I call more woke money laundering. Okay? As you guys heard at the beginning of this video, this guy is trying to spend $1.25 billion, okay, borrow $1.25 billion, aka money that Chicago doesn't have, for the so-called affordable housing projects and economic development projects, these woke projects and these green projects. And he is going to hire a bunch of so-called minorities as the contractors, right? And this is, again, what I call woke money laundering, because a vast majority of the time when these Democrats do stuff like this, what they say is going to happen never actually happens, right? The money spent, but you never actually get all of the development that these people claim is going to happen. And I guarantee you, this money that this man is trying to spend is going to be wasted. A vast majority of it's going to be wasted. It's going to his little buddies, right? It's going to his buddies. It's going to his friends. And then he's bragging about it as if he's actually really doing something for the black community when he's allowing illegals to take over the black community using taxpayer resources, right? And again, who got rich off of this? His liberal nonprofit buddies got rich, right, with the taxpayer dollars being laundered into these nonprofits to take care of illegals. And I guarantee you, this is the exact same thing. The exact same thing is happening over and over and over again, okay? So, with that being said, the DOJ caught wind of the comments made by Brandon Johnson, in which he's clearly talking about racially discriminating when it comes to hiring. And they've now opened up a civil rights investigation into the woke mayor.
We begin here with breaking news from Washington. The Department of Justice has opened a federal investigation into City Hall hiring practices under Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, following comments he made at a Southside church just yesterday.
Our political reporter, Taman Bradley, joins us now with the latest on this move from the Justice Department, which followed a lot of social media outrage over the mayor's comments that he made at a church over the weekend, in which he was talking about hiring black people to work for his administration at City Hall. Right. Taman?
Ben and Lourdes Mayor Brandon Johnson routinely brags about what he's doing for black Chicagoans, but today the Justice Department said he may have broken the law. Today, the Trump administration announced it's investigating Chicago over race-based discrimination. At issue, comments Mayor Brandon Johnson made yesterday at the Apostolic Church of God in Woodlawn. Addressing the black church, Johnson listed black officials serving in his administration.
The deputy mayor is a black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief Operations Officer is a black man.
That set off a firestorm on social media, catching the attention of conservative commentators and media. And so today, the Trump administration has opened an investigation to see whether the Johnson administration may have violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In a letter to Johnson, the DOJ's Civil Rights Division said, when the Attorney General has reasonable cause to believe that a state or local government employer is engaged in a pattern or practice of discrimination in violation of Title VII, It is the Attorney General's responsibility to take appropriate action to eliminate the violation, including seeking injunctive relief. Our investigation is based on information suggesting you made hiring decisions solely on the basis of race. The Justice Department notes it has not reached any conclusions, but it wants to learn more about the city's hiring decisions.
Having people in my administration that will look out for the interest of everyone, and everyone means you have to look out for the interests of Black folks, because that hasn't happened. That's how we ensure long-term sustainable growth.
The next step is for the city to respond to discuss parameters of the investigation. We reached out to Mayor Johnson's office for comment, and we've not heard back. Ben and Lourdes.
So, I'm just saying that I wish that these so-called Black leaders would stop doing this, right? Because you're not really helping people out when you brag about putting people in positions of power that are so-called people of color, right? You're definitely not helping when your city is a disaster, right? When even the Black people in your city don't like you, okay? Everybody dislikes the mayor for the most part. This is why his approval rating is so low. But you're bragging about putting Black people in positions of power for, again, an administration that is very much disliked. Yeah, I don't think you are helping people out, right? I don't think you're accomplishing what you think you're accomplishing. But ultimately today, I mean, this is just a campaign stunt. That's all it is, right? So this dude is taking all this money, billions of dollars, putting it into these woke projects and then bragging about it for votes. That's all he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing because he's desperate. His approval rating is so low that he's likely going to get voted out, okay, in the next election. And this is what you got to do when you're desperate, right? You race hustle, right? You come out here and you promise people and you tell people that you're doing all these things for people based off race to get them to vote for you. And that's essentially what's happening here. That's exactly what's happening, okay? And, ultimately, I don't know what's going to come of this investigation, but there certainly should be an investigation into his comments, because if they're discriminating against people in hiring based off race, then that's unacceptable, right? It's totally unacceptable. It would be unacceptable if Mayor Johnson was white and he said what he said and bragged about putting white people in positions of power. The race hustlers will be losing their minds, right? They'd be losing their minds. But in this situation, this is acceptable, right? This is okay. And it's like, no, we can't live in a country like that. We can't have these type of double standards. So again, we will see what comes of this. Regardless, Mayor Johnson is a complete and total disaster. And this just reeks of desperation. Don't fall for the nonsense. Please let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.